Can we open up and talk about what we think natural communication is? If anarchy, in principle, is a way of talking about what natural communication is.
What do you mean by natural communication? Like the baseline communication? How the highest content communication? I mean, I'm just wondering what natural communication means.
So another question.
I was just talking about natural communication. I mean, 90% of all information that's shared between humans is body language.
Yeah.
It may seem sort of off the wall, but I think you could take most human activities and see them in a troop of baboons or chimpanzees, except for the fact that we're able to rationalize our way out of being group members when it's convenient to step out of being responsible for each other, which I think chimpanzees have more trouble doing. I'm not trying to do me and humans, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
that you put clothes and language and a long track of information and skills and science behind us, and we probably come very close to moving away from the humanity standard that chimpanzees practice.
Yeah.
Have you read anything by Franz de Waal?
Mm-hmm.
He's an ethologist who works a lot with primates, and that's basically very, very true.
That may be why I ran across it. It was a news story.
Yes, yeah, it's probably about him then.
I know. A few weeks ago, I went to the Bird and saw. No, it wasn't the Bird. I was in DC, and we saw Planet of the Apes, the new one. I mean these. You have a super chimp who gets thrown in with the rest of the chimps, and there's this awesome scene where he just finally fights the powerful one, and he dominates physical strength to intellectual strength, and he trains them to outdo humans and to find their haven, to find their Garden of Eden, if you will, across the San Francisco Bridge. I mean, that's Hollywood for you, right? They take certain formulas that we find popular or we find important, and they emphasize them to entertain us. But that movie, exactly, Ron, it's this idea of animalistic physicalization, writing, the impulse to write, the impulse to share. Does anybody else? Yes.
Like communication that occurs organically, like not forced to, say this or like talk about this to someone. It's just something that inherently you want to get across to someone in whatever form you want to.
In what other medium, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can use any kind of medium. Like,
Medium is media.
well, yeah, you could, if you wanted to communicate something through a news report, you could use that, or like a article or video. I guess depending on what you're trying to get across and what form best works with what you're trying to do with that.
I mean, I would say, to me, the natural communication is, I guess, in two parts, is whatever you have the most control over, how you form it. Like, as in when we talk to each other, we can use our faces to express a wide variety of emotions. Or when you, like, that's very different. You have a lot of control of your vocal cords to add inflection to specific points, to add emphasis to those points, versus electronic forms where you can't add that emphasis unless you want to like go into different fonts for every single word, which I think is be cool. But where you have a different ability to inject meaning into any source of inflection. I don't know how to say it, just it. But also then there's, if the medium is like easiest to transmit to another person in some way, that there's not much loss of information
volunteers to enter a space.
Before that, can I say something too on
Please.
what you were asking?
Yeah.
And I just had one thing that came to my mind when you asked, you know, what is natural communication? The law of attraction is really, to me, what it is, because how you're culturally brought up and raised and grow to basically like the micro, the macro, like law of attraction that is the communication.
Guess does it say something else about communication? I'm trying to think of, you know, what we actually use our verbal communication for, and it seems like most of the time we do it, we're either trying to get information, share information, or persuade.
That's good, and you're actually going one step beyond. We're gonna do a physical exercise, and then we're gonna talk about steps.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna write that down though, Philip. It's Phil or Philip?
Well,
Okay. 2 volunteers who are willing to. Nate? Okay. So Ron, you're number 1.
Number one.
Nate, you're number 2. And just hold this note in front of you both. Can you clearly see who's 1 and 2? Okay.
Okay, thanks.
And just read what's written there.
You're number 1.
Oh. Hi.
How are you?
Fine.
That's good.
Bye.
Thank you. Can I have 2 more?
Wanna do more?
He wants to do more.
Same thing.
Yes, please. And you guys can choose who's 1 or 2.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine.
That's good.
Goodbye.
Thank you. And can I have 1 more set?
Hi.
How are you?
Fine.
Well, that's good.
Goodbye.
Thanks, you guys. A lot of acting classes actually start with that exercise because before you get a script, right? It's written out for you what the character says. But a great way to practice communication is just to see there's so many ways of saying the same things. A neutral script. I mean, and I guess the idea behind this is just like, you know, can language be manipulated? Can scripts for TV shows or for radio interviews or for you know, a sitcom, there's scripts and maybe possibly manipulated messages. And I know that this is probably something we're all very hyper aware of and know about. My intention is not to patronize or to make us feel, you know, like we're in school right now. It's just maybe seeing, you know, and discussing how we feel manipulated, how we feel censored. So that's good. So do you wanna, I'm thinking maybe by 4:15, we can go downstairs and make coffee or have a break. So maybe the next 15 minutes we can have our second revolutionary book club reading. Do we have?
Yeah, I mean, 15 minutes might be a little long, but
We'll start it like next section with that,
okay.
and then we'll talk about the steps of media. How can we go forward communicating, and how possibly Occupy already uses tools to communicate, and what we're noticing, what are we observing. We very rarely get to talk about this. Would you like to do that?
Great. So this section is on the media and war. So the previous readings were focused on the power of media to inform and influence the public debate, One aspect of that power is to sell war to the American public. The influence of the media is not always found in what is said, but also in what is not said. So to examine this aspect of the media's power, we will read excerpts from the book Weapons of Mass Deception by Sheldon Rampton and John Clyde Stauber, and then again from an essay by John Pilger. So Sheldon Rampton and John Clyde Stauber in Weapons of Mass Deception have this to say. A number of Clear Channel stations also pulled the Dixie Chicks from their playlist after the group's lead singer, Natalie Maines, told fans in London that they were ashamed to be from the same state as President Bush. In Colorado Springs, 2 disc jockeys were suspended from Clear Channel affiliate KKCS for defying the ban. Station manager Jerry Grant admitted that KKCS had received 200 calls from listeners, 75% of which were callers who wanted the ban lifted. Nevertheless, he said, he gave the DJs an alternative. Stop it now and they'll be on suspension, or they can continue playing them, and when they come out of the studio, they won't have a job. Cumulus Media, another radio conglomerate that owns 262 stations, also banned the Dixie Chicks from all of its country stations. They go on talking about the discussion of war in media. Greater diversity could be found in the print media, but pro-war voices still predominated. Journalism professor Todd Gitlin tabulated editorials that appeared in the Washington Post during a 12-week period shortly before the onset of the war, and found that hawkish op-ed pieces numbered 39, dovish ones 12, a ratio of more than 3 to 1. In addition to restricting the number of anti-war voices on television and radio, media outlets often engaged in selective presentation. The main voices that television viewers saw opposing the war came from a handful of celebrities, such as Sean Penn, Martin Sheen, Janine Garofalo, and Susan Sarandon, actors who could easily be dismissed as brie-eating Hollywood elitists. The newspapers and TV networks could have easily interviewed academics and other more traditional anti-war sources, but they rarely did. Peace groups attempted to purchase commercial time to broadcast ads for peace, but were refused time by all major networks and even MTV. CBS President Martin Franks explained the refusal by saying, "We think that informed discussion comes from our news programming." Yeah. He said that. So John Pilger, again in his essay, The Secret Power of Media, says, the American company CNN, which is owned by the billionaire Ted Turner, is the model of the information age. CNN made its reputation with its round-the-clock coverage of the Gulf War. It was CNN that we saw relayed on the BBC and ITV during the war. Who can forget the lit-up skies over Baghdad coming to us live, and the excited commentators describing the accuracy of the new, smart weapons and the preciseness of the surgical strikes, so precise that missiles could go round corners, and so smart that they could distinguish between good people and bad people. And we actually saw it happening on television, or rather, we thought we did. The message was clear. War at last had become a science. And this was a war, according to the Independent newspaper, with miraculously few casualties. Long after the Gulf War, I remember vividly one surreal moment from television. It was on the BBC's arts program, The Late Show, which devoted an edition to foreign correspondents talking about their adventures in the Gulf War. As each one spoke, the background filled with images from the war itself, mostly tanks and artillery and missiles flashing brilliantly in the night. Then suddenly, the scene changed to bulldozers at work, and the reporter's monologue was overwhelmed by shocking pictures they couldn't see behind them. Driven by American soldiers, the bulldozers were pushing thousands of bodies into mass graves. Many of the bodies were crushed, as if they'd been run over. To my knowledge, the BBC's subversive blink was the only time the British public was allowed to see the true extent of the slaughter in the Gulf. Recently, The Guardian carried a small item, that only 8% of the weapons used in the Gulf War were so-called smart weapons, and the majority were old-fashioned, highly inaccurate dump bombs. And we now know that most of them missed their military targets, killing tens of thousands of men, women, and children, including the very Shia and Kurd minorities that the West claimed to be defending. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 5 minutes before the break. Bill, are you able to remember, well, I'm sorry that I cut you off before, about steps? Because you were starting to organize an idea.
I was just thinking that when we were talking about natural communication, I was thinking of the reasons or the things that we use verbal communication for. And it seemed to be the three things that I thought of were to get information, to share information, or to persuade.
We have existing social utilities that, Orva Media is currently using, our movement. Does Facebook, on Facebook, do you feel like we are all able to get information, to share information, and to persuade?
Yes.
And why?
Yes, but it's very disconnected. It feels disconnected, trying to follow any kind of timeline, looking at maybe 6 or 7 different pages. It's good information, and it's timely and it's relevant. You have to follow like 7 different places in order to.
So maybe a little disconnected. Do you think that's Facebook?
If you're talking about things on Facebook, like sharing links, that's a great way to share information. When you're commenting on links or commenting on wall posts or something, then you really have to use simply the power of whatever words you're writing, since it's completely divorced from any kind of body language or inflection or tone.
But it has a face. Devil's advocate.
What, you mean you can't express the entire range of your emotions through emoticons?
Hold on, I was saying is since you just have the words that you're writing, or whatever outside sources might be linking, it's kind of like verbal communication in its pure form.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is text itself. On Facebook, you have no idea how I'm saying it.
Yeah,
And
it's not
so,
that.
yeah.
There's no inflection, there's no tone.
Exactly. So the persuasion is your own interpretation. I think that it's unfortunate, but it's still kind of like really powerful that Facebook is something that we can use within Occupy to get information, share information. It's pretty much the fastest tool we have right now to do that.
Fast.
Do you think that the complete lack of inflection, complete lack of body language, complete lack of anything other than the actual text, internet communication in general contributes to how easily internet arguments can blow up into screaming fights with people you've never met before? A big part of it, I'm sure, is that you're not seeing them face to face, so there's less empathy, but is the lack of tone a contributing factor too, maybe?
Yeah. Chris, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I guess as far as, there's lots of issues with censorship on Facebook, but it's also fairly exclusionary to, I guess, generationally, I guess somebody would have to have a computer and cable internet more than likely to be on Facebook, and somebody would have to know how to make a Facebook page. So, it is the fastest tool, for those who are fast enough to catch up. And it's like a pretty homogeneous crowd for the most part of people who find out about things. I found out about this through exclusively Facebook. So that's you know, there's all sorts of issues with everything that's being discussed.
It's true, it does select out people who can't afford a computer or don't have regular access to one.
Right.
Don't know how to operate it.
Yeah.
Right.
Nobody ever taught them.
Right.
I actually had something for the earlier one, but I guess I can respond to this one. I would say that the methods of our communication with each other also determine who we're going to be talking to. And not only the fact of that I'm more likely to carry on conversations with someone who uses Facebook, but I'm more likely to, like, someone who can effectively use writing, especially on the internet, is more able to get content out to me, and we're more is more able to have a deeper conversation and to effectively say what they're trying to say and get rid of some confusion.
We're at 4:15, but I want us, you know, this is a conversation I want this to evolve. This is, I think, a really important one. You know, I know that when I go on Facebook, I have like a certain manner of doing things. Like if someone friends me right away, I'll post on their wall, I'll be like, yeah. You found me on this thing, and you know, but I know that there's like certain ethics. Like sometimes somebody won't get back to me if I do that. But if I like read their wall and see what they've been up to, like what events they've been going to, what they've been doing, what they're posting, and I comment on something, I get more of a response. So it's thinking about strategies based on this like kind of natural way of coordinating that's happened on this new mechanism. That's really cool. How can we use this natural mechanism that's happening naturally on Facebook for Occupy's agendas? And is it a balance between maybe flyers, maybe computer training courses, ways to get people who aren't involved or to try to bridge that generation gap? Is it just a generation gap for people who don't have computers?
No, it's economic.
There's an example of Jeremy who chooses not to be on Facebook because of their policies.
Yeah.
I would also say I'm only on Facebook at this point because I'm kind of being held hostage by it, by my interactions with people and losing those connections and finding out news and information.
Yeah.
Twitter bridges that a little bit, but for some people, but again, there's an opt-out choice. And you also lose that, it's not just generational. And is there an alternative to that that's effective?
Cool. All right, let's make coffee and get, you know, I recognize, you know, mostly everybody. Welcome. And let's have a little time just to relax, stretch your muscles, and then when we get back, I wanted to do something a little bit more dramatic, and then go into a little more creative writing with film. Yeah. Yay!
Thanks, Laura.